Welcome to Women of the Wild,
where education and opportunities are key.
And friendships are made to last a lifetime.
Did you get it?
You think we got him? You think we got him? We got him. We said that yesterday.
All right, Skylar, what do we got here?
We've got a nice looking rip-off.
Yeah. Oh, there she is. Woo! You dropped our great ghost.
Give me a hug.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Women of the Wild podcast. I am your host, Linda White, and today my special guest with me is Samantha Bell, and she is one of our ambassadors, team members, know everything out there kind of girl. So, Sam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing good. I have to put out there that you know everything because you seem to be the one that I keep going to for, hey, can you figure this out or can you do this? So you're my jack of all trades.
Well, that's a very big compliment. I appreciate that. I wouldn't say I know everything, but I know some things.
Well, you seem to know everything that I need to know about, so I like it.
You can call me a right-hand man.
There you go. So, Samantha, let's talk a little bit about how you got involved in the outdoors. You know, what really kicked things off for you and all the fun stuff you've been doing.
Oh man, I mean, just the outdoors in general. I think ever since I could walk, my parents probably set me outside, Interestingly enough, I've spent most of my life in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, but a few years in my childhood was actually spent in South Florida due to, certain things with my family. My mom's mom, she got very sick at one point, so they kind of moved down to Florida to be closer to her during that time. And eventually we found our way back up to the UP when I was about 6 years old because I think my parents were just ready to move out of like the bigger city area that we were in. And then on my dad's side, for many, many generations, we had a hunting camp in Baraga County up here. And so they were very familiar with the UP. And I think they decided, well, let's move the kids up there, move closer to the cabin. And I think, it very much worked out that way. But it's kind of interesting because, my little bit of my time in Florida, of all places, I grew up, catching catfish off of a dock and catching lizards and all of that. And then I'm 6 years old and I'm making snow angels for the first time and all these things. And so, when we moved up here during those earlier years of my life, I got to go to the cabin that we had in the fall and, was very much exposed to hunting because my dad was an avid deer hunter, avid grouse and bird hunter. And of course we did a lot of fishing. I mean, I've done fishing my whole life. I mean, every so often when I go back down to Florida to visit my relatives there, we'll go out and catch all kinds of crazy things down there. And just living up here, we, do a lot of pan fishing in the summertime, catch a lot of brook trout in the rivers. So it's just kind of been something that's always just been a part of my life. But I didn't really do any hunting myself until these past recent years of my adulthood.
So why is that?
Yeah, so I think a few things. I mean, we unfortunately had to sell our hunting cabin when I was in high school. So I kind of lost that connection, right?
Mhm.
And then of course I get to college and I went to Northern Michigan University up here, which has several opportunities for hunting and fishing and everything, but I think I pretty much was the usual college kid that spent most of her time doing schoolwork, working, going to the gym, and socializing, and that's not the bad thing. But then I graduated college in 2018, got my big girl job, and I moved actually to the Metro Detroit area, which I figured out very quickly is not where I belong. But when I moved down there, I was like, wow, okay, this is the first time in my life I really feel like I have time to actually think about a hobby, right? Or like doing something else.
Yeah.
With my free time, because I was working, but I didn't have homework, and just there was suddenly just this extra time that I was able to tap into, right?
Right.
So I've always loved horses, actually. So for that period of my life, spent a lot of time at the barn. I leased a couple different horses and just really enjoyed that. And then eventually I found my way back to living up here in the UP, and again was still riding horses, doing all that, and just enjoying more of the other things to do around here, and fished a lot. But let me think here. I guess specifically it was fall of 2021. I was really adamant of like, I really want to get myself a deer. And I think these years of my adulthood, I was probably stuck in that mindset that I would say a lot of girls fall into, of like, oh, I need someone to take me. And I think it's a very fair assumption, because for one, I mean, I grew up shooting guns, right? Like at our cabin growing, I was a wee little lass, I shot shotguns and rifles, pistols, all that, but I was never like mentored to like how to get out there and hunt. And I was like, well, I don't feel comfortable going on public land by myself yet. All these different factors were kind of adding up. So I was like, okay, I need to figure this out. And eventually I kind of networked and found someone to kind of mentor me for that fall. And they put me in a spot, and I shot my first deer. And then it was all downhill from there, Linda. I realized I could actually do it. And what's interesting is when I got that deer, it was, I think, one of the few nights that week that I went out that I was completely by myself too.
Oh, wow.
Which that's what really got me realizing, oh, okay, this is something I'm capable of doing, right? Because I had that confidence, okay, I can handle the firearm on my own. I can walk out there by myself in the dark and not think about all the thousands of things that could be hiding out there. And just being able to, when the moment finally presented itself, focus in and just, make it happen.
Yeah.
So after that,
I can understand that big time. Like, because the very first time that I ever went trapping by myself, I had a coyote in the trap, and I was like, whew. So now I got to take care of all of this. I got to do all the things. I'm like, all right, big girl panties, let's do all the things. And then when you have this animal, so it's a little bit different than than deer hunting. But when you have this animal sitting there looking at you like, all right, either you're going to shoot me or I'm going to bite you, it gets real really quick. So I understand that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, everyone says they never forget their first deer, but like it was crazy. I mean, I always tell the story like it's some big grand thing, but basically it was kind of a smaller little 5-point buck, right? But big enough for me. So, and I remember it was looking at me dead in the eye before I pulled that trigger, and it was just the craziest thing. And I remember pulling that trigger and thinking, oh my gosh, I just fired. like, okay, I got to remember what to do next. And that, you do nothing. You sit there and you wait and you wait. And yeah, it was a very ethical shot. Found him like, I don't know, less than 50 yards away. Perfect.
Oh, wow.
Everything I could have wanted. So.
Well, that That sounds a little different than my first deer. So my first deer, I shot her. Well, I should back up a little bit. So my husband like always talks about how, if you want big bucks, you got to let bucks grow. You don't shoot the little things because you want to let bucks grow. So
Absolutely.
this little it was a 6 point, but it was a smaller 6 point that walked in, and
Yep.
I was like, oh, I can't shoot that. I gotta let it go. I gotta let it go. And my husband was like, when I came down off the hill the first time, he's like, why did you not shoot it? I'm like, because it's a little buck. And he's like, but it's your first one, so you could have totally done that. So I went back up with the mind frame that I was going to shoot this buck today because we had it on the camera coming in and out. And I sat there, and it never came back in. And this little doe came in, and I'm like, I'm just shooting it. It's like, I'm not waiting anymore. I'm shooting
Yeah.
it. And I did, and she dropped right there. And
Perfect.
but I've always heard that they run off and die.
Right.
So
Yep.
I was like, I must have done something wrong. I was like, she just dropped. Like, what do I do now?
What happened?
And it was so funny because I called my husband and I'm like, what do I do? And he's like, what do you mean? What do you do? And I'm like, she's laying on the ground in front of me. And he's like, I don't know what you're asking. And I was like,
That's great.
I'm like, so it was my little blonde moment, but because I've always heard about, like,
Yeah.
you're going to track the deer, you're going to do this, you need to sit in the stand a little bit, give it some time, then go try, all this stuff, like all the things that you learn in your hunter safety course and all this. So,
Yeah.
so I was doing that, but that wasn't what you know what I mean? So I was sitting there and I'm like,
Yeah.
well, now what do I do? Like,
No.
it's just there.
And that's funny. You had a similar situation, actually, to my archery deer this year. Like it dropped right there, and I was like, that was my first thought too. I was like, oh no, something went wrong, 'cause
Right.
that
Like, it
never
didn't run
happened.
away.
Yeah, but yeah, glad it worked out for you just like it did for me.
Yeah.
And I'm with you on that too, of like letting bucks get bigger, and that's totally how I view it here too. But in the UP, our deer population has changed so much over the last few years or decade or just over time. It's very hard to get doe tags during rifle season these days. A lot of units you have to apply for one. So when I was doing that first hunt, my only option was a buck tag. So at that point, it kind of turns into, well, I would like some meat in my freezer, but
Right.
so,
Yeah, I don't blame you on that one. So
Yeah.
you've mentioned that you also you bow hunt now too.
Yeah, so let's see. Last year in the spring, I decided, I was like, all right, this is going to be the year I get into archery because, well, one, I've always wanted to, but like I said, with like the deer population up here,
Yeah.
like I said, you have to apply to get doe tags in certain areas for rifle season. But in archery season, you can get doe tags
Uh-huh.
a lot more easily. So I really did that because I didn't want to take another small buck this year. And so yeah, I got my first bow, I think it was back in April, started shooting all summer, and I love it. It's a totally different ball game than firearm. And I still have a lot more practice I need to do. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, but it's challenging,
Mm-hmm.
but very rewarding when it works out. So yeah.
Yeah. You should talk to Megan Lockwood on the team. She is a phenomenal bow hunter. And I always
Yeah.
I'm always asking her questions. I'm always she actually let me borrow an older bow of hers just so I could get started because I've never archery hunted.
Yeah, I'm like the first archery hunter in my family. So when I got my bow, I was asking Felicia so many questions because I didn't really know who else to ask.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did you end up getting hooked up with Women of the Wild? What was your first experience? How did that all start? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think I had been following the page for a bit, and it was last year, probably. It would have had to have been just before springtime when I found the page and everything, but I just remember they posted the bow fishing trip.
Hmm.
And I was like, that was right after I had gotten my new bow and everything too. So I was all about it. And I was, I thought, man, I really want to bow fish.
Yeah.
And this would be a great opportunity because the event was hosted in Wisconsin, which wasn't that far of a drive for me. And I was like, well, it's with a bunch of random people, but what could go wrong? Well, that whole weekend, I think, just changed everything for me. It was such a great time, and I surprised myself at actually being able to get some fish.
You didn't think you would?
I don't know. I just did better than I thought I would. It's very challenging, but it's just very different.
Yeah. I've told Felicia that I wanted to go on one of our bow fishing trips because I've never bow
You
fished.
absolutely need to. Yeah.
And I think it sounds so cool.
It is. I would say it's one of the coolest things to do because it's at night. You're
Yeah.
all like hyped up, and you're like, "This is my crazy Saturday night. Is just shooting some fish." Like it's just even saying that. Like I'm gonna go shoot some fish. Like that just sounds insane, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
It kinda does.
and the other thing too was we were shooting these huge carp and gar, and I've never seen any of those fish, at least in the lakes and stuff I've fished at up here in the UP. I know we have them here, but I had never really seen them before either. And I was like, man, these are weird looking.
This is some crazy stuff we've got going on here. That's
Yeah.
cool. That's so cool. So how many events have you done with us? What all have you done?
Let's see. I did the bow fishing trip, obviously. I'm trying to remember. I know I did the early goose weekend.
That kicked off waterfowl for you, didn't it?
Oh, that just spiraled the addiction I now have in the best way. That weekend changed everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you actually ended your waterfowl season with Women of the Wild as well, right?
I did. Yes, it was very special to be able to do that.
That's really cool. That's really, really cool. So was this your first year of waterfowl?
It absolutely was. Yeah. Yeah, at the rate I'm going, I bought a flat bottom boat a few months ago. And probably gonna have my shed full of decoys at this rate. So
That's awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's just so much fun. I mean, like I love turkey hunting, I love deer hunting, but what's so nice about duck hunting and goose hunting and all that is just the camaraderie, right? Because you get to sit there with a group, you get to talk, you get to just
Yeah, you don't have to be quiet
Yeah.
the whole time. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's nice to actually be able to hunt with people. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
you
Make it
know,
a
like
social
if
event.
yeah, well, like if you're like turkey hunting, like you could maybe have one or two people with you in a blind or something, but I mean, for the most part, you're not hanging out with a whole group. So what made you sign up for waterfowl? I mean, if this is the first time you've ever done it, like what inspired you to be like, "Hey, why don't we give this a try?"
Well, it's something I always thought looked fun, but I didn't know anyone who duck hunted up here, really. Of course, now I do. I've networked my way around, but yeah, I was like, well, this is a perfect opportunity to give it a try.
So what are some of the things that I mean, now that you've done some of our events, you've kind of networked your way around and everything with some of the people that really associate themselves with us. What are some of the things that are on your bucket list now? What are things that you're like, "Oh, I definitely am trying this," or "We better get this event because I want to do it"?
Well, if I were to list off everything, Linda, this podcast would probably be well over an hour.
Okay.
But
Fair enough.
just
Let's
to
go like the top 5 or 10. All right.
Yeah.
Like, let's
Yeah,
not go crazy.
No, that's a good amount. Well, I definitely want to go out west next year. For pronghorn or antelope or mule deer, anything like that. Definitely want to get my first muskie this summer.
Ah, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, definitely have Alaska on my list for someday.
Did you listen to our podcast with Tana?
I
Who-
did, yeah.
She's freaking amazing. That
She
woman
is
is
incredible.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you
No,
definitely need
my
to like
jaw dropped during the bear story.
oh yeah. You definitely need to network with her, get connected. I've been to Alaska, not with her, but I've been to Alaska.
Okay.
It's gorgeous up there. It is so pretty. My favorite part, people think that I'm kind of crazy, but like we flew into Anchorage and we drove to Fairbanks and we did it in March. And it was the most gorgeous drive I have ever had in my life.
Oh, I
Like,
can imagine.
and I have like 100 and some pictures of mountains. Like I didn't realize you could take that many pictures of mountains, but I did.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I believe it.
yeah, you definitely need to connect with her and either do some kind of retreat that she's got going on or figure that out because
Right.
it'll be amazing. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, and then I guess another thing I really want to tackle this year is honestly just my first steelhead. Like I've only caught little brook trout kind of stuff in the rivers. I know there's plenty of places to get those here, but I've gone a couple times and the fish have gotten the best of me every time. So we'll see. And then another thing too, I would really like to get my first black bear, maybe this year. In Michigan, it's a bit more difficult to get a tag. It's kind of a points and kind of a draw system, but actually in Minnesota, I think there's an over-the-counter unit that I'm gonna try to look into.
So we have bears right behind our house, and you can come to New York, and you are more than welcome to come and shoot all of the bears behind my house.
Well, don't tempt me with a good time now.
I'm not kidding. So there's this one bear that I have been stalking for 2 years now. And,
Really?
oh yeah. Now I got to tell you this. So he comes in like we know where he's going. We have his path down and he takes the same path every year. So we're not exactly sure where the den is, but we have like where he's hibernating and everything at, but we know roughly about. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's rude. He's just rude. That's what it is. So during hunting season, like any other time, he'll be out all in the cameras all day long. You'll see him, you'll this, you'll that. During hunting season, he comes past our food plot and he goes on this trail right before daylight. And then he comes back through the food plot right after dark.
Wow.
Every time. I can't tell you how many times. Like I almost broke my phone the one time because we have those cameras that go like the cell phone cameras.
Yep.
And I sat up there day after day after day after day waiting for this. And I would come home and I'd be taking off my camo and I would hear ding, ding.
Oh, that's the
I'm
worst.
like, you're a jerk. Like,
they get smart.
Yeah. Well, and the one time, because I was so mad about it, I was like, I'm going to sit here. I am going to sit here. And my husband like messages me and he's like, babe, it is getting dark. And I'm like, just a few more seconds. He's like, honey, think about this. If you shoot this bear, you are in the dark with a bear. Like,
that's true.
I'm like, all right, fair enough. I'm gonna get down. Like, he's like, he goes, you really need to get like moving. And the problem is like where our food plot is like I feel like it stays lighter in that area longer, if that makes sense.
Huh.
Like the way it is, it just seems like it stays longer because you'll get down and you'll start walking and you'll be like, wow, it's really dark. Like, and I don't know if it's just more because it's open in that area and you have to walk through the woods to kind of come out. But it was so funny when he's like, Linda, you're in the woods in the dark with a bear. Like, think about this.
Right.
So yeah, you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome to come to New York and shoot a bear anytime. We have a plethora of them and we'd like to get rid of them.
Well, I would be more than happy to help you out.
There you go. There you go. So you can put that, New York bear. Check that on your list there. So
Definitely.
yeah. If you'd like to go salmon fishing, we've got good salmon up here too. So
Deal. And I love that you're talking about all of this because so many people don't realize how many opportunities are in New York. Everyone just thinks, oh, the city. It's like, no, it's a whole state. It's not just that spot.
It's funny that you say that because like I'll tell people, whenever they ask about, where are you from? I'll be like, I'm from New York. And they'll be like, how do you trap with all those buildings?
What?
Like, I live on 71 acres in the middle of nowhere. There are no buildings. Like, no buildings.
Geez.
Yeah. So it's funny. But, like the UP, I got to tell you. So I went up to the UP. My first time that I was in the UP was about 4 years ago. And you cross that bridge and it's like you're in a whole nother world.
Yeah.
It's like I went back to like the 1930s or something. Like,
Yeah, time has stopped in a few of those towns. Yeah.
yeah, like I couldn't get over how, and it's so beautiful.
It is.
And now a short word from our sponsors.
Do you enjoy the great outdoors and hope to share that excitement with your kids? Now you can through Dr. Josh Farr's great collection of books. Share your love of nature while also teaching valuable life lessons on friendship and learning the alphabet with books like The ABCs of Hunting. Plus, the ABCs of Hunting workbook is the perfect learning tool to captivate young readers and create a foundation for your future hunter. Find out more about these and other books from Dr. Josh Farr at drjoshfarr.com. That's drjoshfarr.com.
Girls with Guns Clothing is a proud sponsor of Women of the Wilds podcast. If you are looking for hunting gear, be sure to check out our new fall collection, including the launch of our new Artemis Generation 2 lineup. With Girls with Guns, you know that our gear has been designed and field tested by women who actually hunt and wear this gear. We have an amazing team of women who contribute and share their ideas and extensive field testing so that our gear works for you in multiple hunting environments. We build our gear for women of all shapes and sizes, made by women for women. If you want to try out GWG, you can go to gwgclothing.com and use WILD15 for a discount off of your first order.
Hey everyone, Andy from ACC Crappie Sticks. I want to tell you about our full line of vertical jigging and live scoping crappie rods. We have from 10 foot to 13 foot in mid seat to rear seat and available in cork and super grip handles to cover all of your vertical fishing and live scoping needs. Go to accrappiesticks.com. Thank you.
Well, you see, trappers are a special breed of people. We're dedicated, committed, and passionate about what we do and who we are. Each and every one of us has an intense desire to be the very best we can. So in the world of skinny jeans, man buns, and pumpkin spice lattes, sometimes you just have to stop, push back, and tell the world, that's not me. Whether you're from the far north or in the deep south and anywhere in between, Southern Snares can help you succeed at getting the job done and being who you are.
We would also like you to check out Sawmill Creek Bait and Lures, RMC Custom Calls, Atlantic Coral Enterprise, Blast and Cast Guide Service, Epler Fur, Feather Moon Calls, Shangri-La Safaris, Shelley Emmer with Dirty Girl Guide Service, and Hunting Day Podcast.
And now back to the podcast.
I gotta ask, like now that you've kind of got into the hunting thing and you've got some bucket list items, have you been kind of like figuring out how you can do some of these things that maybe you never thought of up there before?
Yeah, so I guess just going back to waterfowl too, I would have never thought I was gonna buy a boat. Granted, it's just a 15-foot John boat, but it's got, you know, some like camo coverings on it and all this stuff, and I totally want to do some work on it and kind of refresh it so it's really gonna be a really nice sneak boat that I want to use this fall. And this whole summer I want to use it for fishing. And it's just really interesting how, in my 20s my mindset went from, oh well, I gotta find people to take me to, well, if I wait around, I may never get to go. But I have to credit Women of the Wild and Felicia and everyone that I've met just this past year, because they're the ones that have like really instilled that confidence and giving me the tools and the things I needed to learn in order to realize that.
I think that that's a very powerful message to women in general. Like so many of us don't have that confidence, and we're worried that we're doing it wrong, especially with like a firearm or something like that comes into play
Yeah.
where you know safety, not that men don't think about safety, but I feel like women have like over an extra anxiety. You know what I mean? Like we want everybody to
I would
be,
definitely agree.
yeah, like that we want everybody to be safe. We want things to go right. We want to make sure that it's taken care of. And I love that you said, I don't have to wait around for people now. I have that
Right.
confidence because I think that's huge. I think that's so empowering to women in general, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not man bashing. Do not take that in any way. I'm not man
Right.
bashing, but it's nice to know like you don't need to wait for your husband, your boyfriend, your father, whatever, to take
Right.
to take you out. You can go do these things, feel comfortable in the woods, feel comfortable on a boat, and
Yep.
be successful.
Yeah, because I mean, just to kind of put this to scale, my first deer hunt, it was on private land. There was a very easy walk to this blind and everything. Now I'm like, okay, like this year I want to go out to some public land spots and check them out myself, set up cameras myself. Like I don't have that fear like I did before. When I was fishing last summer, I did a lot of kayak fishing. So I was like, well, I want to go whenever I want to go, but
Mhm.
I don't know how to operate a boat by myself completely. So that's what I did. But now I'm like, okay, you know what? I think I could figure this out. And I have a lot of friends that I can lean on to help me. And that's the other thing too is, equally realizing your own capabilities, but then also don't be afraid to ask for help. I have always been really bad at that.
Yeah. Yeah, me
So,
too.
yeah.
So I gotta
Yeah.
ask, so you went kayak fishing. How many times did you fall over?
I never fell over. Nope.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I know like when you're reeling that fish in and stuff, like your balance can get a little like shaky, especially pulling it in, and if you're using a net or anything like that, like your balance can get a little off. So
Well,
good
well,
for you.
lucky for me that the panfish and stuff that I caught weren't gonna tip me over.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. All right. All right. All right. All right. I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
I'm flattered that you think that I was like catching absolute monsters, but
Well, I didn't think you were going for, like these muskies or anything, but I thought,
Mm,
maybe some trout or something that you had going
yeah.
on.
You know what is crazy though? Those people down in Florida and down in the South who kayak fish in the ocean and they catch those giant tarpon or whatever that
Yeah.
are like the size of the boat, and I couldn't do that.
Yeah, I don't even know how that's even happening.
Yeah.
So what do? They hook them, they have to hook them to the side of the boat. Is that what they do?
Well, just from pictures I've seen, I think people normally just only lift the head out of the water a little bit. Like, that's all you can do at that point.
Yeah, that's
Can't
crazy.
bring it in the boat with you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, what do you do with that? How does that even work?
Yeah.
I'm definitely going over on that one. I'm not gonna lie. Like
Yeah.
that is like a double life jacket. I feel like. I feel like that's definitely a double life jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, any funny or interesting stories, something maybe that you've learned over the last couple years, that other women out there might be able to relate to, might be able to just kind of take some humor in, anything.
Oh, now you asked me a question I have to like think on.
Sorry.
Well, okay, maybe I have one.
All right.
I guess we'll roll with this one.
Okay.
So something I did for the first time this winter was some rabbit hunting, right? I had my 22, and I'm not a great shot with it yet. The story still proves that, but
Okay.
basically it was me and 3 other people, and this rabbit presented itself, I want to say, Linda, like 20 feet in front of us. And it like came running out of this bush, stopped and like stared at all 4 of us. And granted, it was me with my 22, another person had 22, and it was my boyfriend and his brother. They both had some pistols, right?
Okay.
And we were like a firing squad at that point at this poor rabbit, and none of us hit it. Not
Oh,
a single
geez.
one of us hit it. But it was just so funny because when I remember what happened, it just feels like something out of a cartoon.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
like the rabbit just stops, is like bink, like stares and runs away.
So that's like my turkey story. So I got to tell you my turkey story. All right. So I went turkey hunting for actually, this was the second year that I went turkey hunting, but the first year, like, I just kind of like sat there and was like, okay, this is what we do. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't really hunting. So the first year I decided I was actually going to hunt. We get in the blind. My husband does all the stuff. Like, he calls them in. He's got the
Yep.
decoy out there. I mean, he's doing all the stuff. All right.
Yeah.
So this turkey comes in, and there was a Jake, a Tom, a couple hens, and they're all right there. And he's like, "Which one are you shooting?" Like, and I said, "Well, I feel like I got a better shot on the Jake." And he's like, "That's fine. Just do that. Not a problem." All right. So I'm ready. And I shoot this. And now I have a GoPro, okay, like on me, like looking at this. So I shoot this bird. All the birds around it fly away. There's no feathers. There's no nothing. The bird that I went and shot looks at me and just walks away.
Oh no.
Just walks away. Like, it wasn't even like a scurry. It was just walking away. And I watched this GoPro, I can't tell you how many times, and I still can't tell you how I didn't hit this bird. I cannot tell you. And my husband's like, "What happened?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"I don't know."
There's no explanation. And that was the thing that happened that day with the rabbit. They all like, my boyfriend likes to tease me. He's like, "Why didn't you hit it?" I'm like, "What do you mean? I wasn't the only one shooting." So it's like,
Why didn't you hit it?
Yeah, I was like, "There's 4 of us and no one could hit it." So like, yeah, no, things like that sometimes happen. It's very weird.
Yeah, it's funny though. I think that
My mother has a story like that with a grouse, actually. I remember this when I was a kid. We were at the cabin one fall, and my dad, he was either out bird hunting or deer hunting, and it was me, my brother, and her, like, just hanging out at the cabin like usual. And she saw this grouse out in the yard, and she's like, "I'm gonna go get that bird," and I'm so proud of my mom, like, because she doesn't hunt or anything, but this is the one memory I have of her, like, attempting to get any animal.
okay.
She fired this little 22 pistol all around this bird, and it sat there the whole time while she was emptying this gun, and then it flew away after. So, like, that's a story we like to tease my poor mother about, but But
You know
now it seems
what?
like I got a similar one too. So
I think that's great though, because that shows other women like these things happen. Like,
a
don't
lot.
feel
They happen a lot too.
discouraged. Yeah. Like, don't feel discouraged. You're not doing, I mean, obviously you're doing something wrong, but you're not like, it's not the end of the world. You
Right.
know, don't let that discourage you from going back out. Don't let it, stop you. Those things happen and we all have them.
Right.
I think that that's really important for women out there to really grasp, like don't think because the first time you went out and shot something, it didn't fall right then and there. And even whenever
Right.
you do shoot something and it falls right then and there, sometimes you don't know what to do with it. Like
Yeah. There's there's a lot of factors that go into hunting that people don't think about. And like, there's I don't know if you've seen Escanaba in the moonlight.
Mhm.
Okay, so they say all good things come to those who shoot straight, but I also like to say that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So
Right.
especially
Absolutely.
I've learned that especially with waterfowl. There's been too many times this past season where I shot and I surprised myself by actually getting a bird. My first duck. My first duck. That's how it went. I was in this kind of marshy lake area with a couple friends, and a small flock of wood ducks came in, and we just started blasting as one would, and a couple of them dropped, and they were like, "You just got that drake from like 60 yards." I'm like, "No, I didn't." They're like, "Yes, you did. You were the only one that shot at that one."
Oh, nice.
I was like, "Oh," like I had no idea,
Like that was
It,
me.
it was it was like such a memorable day. That bird was so beautiful, and like we don't up here we don't get any birds that are in full plumage usually. So like this wood duck was what many would consider like a teenager
Yeah.
male one, but oh god, they're still so beautiful.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, ducks are gorgeous.
yeah.
Like they are. They're just absolutely beautiful. When I first met my husband, he actually had a whole bunch of ducks that were in the house that were mounted. They were a friend of his.
Uh-huh.
And along with a whole bunch of other animals, it was funny. Like I used to call it like the petting zoo and everything else. Because I mean, like Derek was in the process of moving. So like you had all my husband's mounts and then you had all of his mounts. So I mean, you thought you were like walking in like to Cabela's or something. It was crazy.
My house is turning into that way.
Yeah, I always think it's funny when people are like, yeah, hunting it's like a cheap entertainment. And I'm like, cheap
No,
entertainment. I'm like,
there's
what?
nothing cheap about it
Right, right. I'm like, "What? What are you
at all.
talking about?" Like, the millions and billions of dollars that are spent every year, like
Yeah.
and I always laugh when people are like, "Oh, well, I'm putting food in my freezer. I don't
Right.
wanna go to the grocery store and pay those high prices because 'cause I'm putting food in my freezer." And granted, I am definitely not the one talking you out of this. But if
Um,
you're paying, like, $1,000 a year for a lease, I feel
yeah.
like no, it wasn't
Well,
as cheap as you thought.
no, and I'll tell you right now, archery season was very expensive for me because I lost so many arrows because I missed a couple of deer, like just completely,
Yeah.
like the arrow like whizzed over their heads. There was one deer I shot at and it just stood there and looked back at me like, what was that? So my archery deer was a very expensive deer. But I'm in the same boat. Like I really love the fact that the only meat I buy these days is, a pack of chicken breast every so often and maybe some shrimp because I've got too much fish, deer, and other things in my freezer now. And this year I actually did something I've always dreamed of, and it was that I purchased a quarter of a cow.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a ton of locally raised beef. It just, I don't know, that stuff geeks me out.
You know what? Even though, like, there definitely is an expense to hunting, but I also look at it as more as an investment. The things that you're
Yeah.
buying and everything, it's definitely investment, and you're not buying it every year. But
Mm.
there's definitely something rewarding about knowing that you harvest that animal and you provide that food for your family or for you, or
Mhm.
there's definitely something rewarding about it. And that skill, we've got Chinese balloons going over top of us and everything else right now. You
Yeah.
never know when that skill might come in a lot handier
Yeah.
than you want.
Right. I think it just goes back to human nature. I mean, that's what our ancient ancestors did. And I think that's why, like, when people do it and they get that rewarding feeling, like, it's probably something that's deep in our instincts somehow. I don't
I'm
know.
sure. I'm sure.
And I like the thought of the ducks and geese that are in my freezer. Their quality of life was so much better than the chicken I picked up at Meijer this week.
Right. Right.
They were flying around in the marshes, eating bugs, just having a great time, and just lived probably a longer life too. People don't realize a lot about where our food comes from, and it's almost kind of alarming, I think, too, because we think it's so readily available. And when things happen like the price of eggs going up, everyone's suddenly like, "Oh gosh, what now?" And now I know a lot of people are considering getting chickens, and it's like, well, okay, there's a lot more to chickens than you think. And I myself was even really wanting to get chickens this summer, even before the whole egg price thing. But
Hmm.
I've kind of come to my senses, and I realized I think this summer all I'm going to want to be doing is be fishing on my boat. So you have to think about realistic things like that. But yeah, I think a lot has changed in society with a lot of people kind of realizing some of those things about commercial farming and
Right.
so on.
Well, I think it's good. Like, I'm not saying everybody needs to be a hunter or have a
Right.
garden or
Right.
raise chickens. I'm not
No.
saying that, but I do think that those are valuable skills to have in your
Yep.
arsenal. Like, maybe you don't raise chicken, but
Yep.
now, like, because you've been kind of researching and everything, you realize what goes into this, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you wanted to, you're more prepared.
Yep. And actually, one other thing from my childhood, my parents had two very large gardens, and I swear every type of vegetable you could think of, we grew. So I was always used to very, very fresh produce.
Mhm.
Um, and when my brother and I were kids, we were, I think, used as free labor. But that was very good character building skills, and I know a lot about gardening now, and I would love to be able to do that someday too. And then again, like you said, if something happens, I would know how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? In this day and age, there's too many people who are walking around looking at cell phones, spending
Yeah.
time on Xbox, everything else, and it's almost, in my opinion, totally my opinion, kind of
Mm.
dumbing us down,
Yeah.
you know?
Well,
So
and
getting
also
out
just
there.
like a less touch of reality too.
Yeah, and, like, getting out there, breathing in that fresh air, I feel like that my anxiety, my stress levels, so much changes when I'm outdoors. When I'm
Yep.
when I'm out sitting in a tree stand or sitting in a blind or even gardening and
Mm.
stuff, like,
Yeah.
my anxiety levels change.
Yep. Same.
And I think that's something that people need to stop and sit back and think about, like,
Yeah.
why did our parents or grandparents not have there wasn't everybody wasn't on anxiety meds, everybody wasn't in depression meds, everybody wasn't, all these things were not happening. I have a gluten
Yeah.
allergy, though that was not even a thing when my
No.
grandparents, because our food was processed different.
Yeah.
We weren't on cell phones. Heck, you were lucky if you had a TV, let alone, any kind of device. But they were outside. They were preparing their own foods. They were harvesting them. They were, and I think that speaks a lot,
It does.
you
Yeah.
know.
And my my full-time job, I work for a digital marketing agency and I work from home. Um, I've been working for this company for like 3 years now, and my first year at the company, it wasn't fully remote. I only went to my office, I think once or twice a week though, so it was really nice. And then of course COVID hit, and at the same time, the building lease was up, and my boss was like, "Well, there's no point renewing that." So I've been working remote for a few years now, and it's great. I love the flexibility. I love having my home office. Um, but as soon as 5 o'clock hits, I'm like, all right, I'm going outside,
Yeah.
and just getting out and getting fresh air and moving. And then of course, when you're hunting, when you're fishing, it just really fully allows me to disconnect from
I
things like
agree.
that. Um, and I'm super excited to be going on the Aoudad hunt this spring. And I had to tell my bosses, like, well, for a few days of this trip, I am going to be completely off the grid. So if something goes wrong, someone's obviously going to handle things while I'm gone. But I just really love the idea and concept that no one will be able to email me.
Yeah, I think we all need that whole like unplugging to
Yeah.
like kind of just fill our cups back up, you know?
Yeah.
I don't feel I feel like there's so many people out there that don't realize how like as your battery on your phone is draining, your battery's draining too. Like that stuff is like
Yeah,
soul sucking.
it is, and I can't completely knock on social media or anything because, it's part of what my company does, right?
Right.
And it's honestly what brought me to Women of the Wild and like more friends and all these other connections I have now. But it's good and it's bad, and we all know why. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah, everything has its place. Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. So, I try to keep these to roughly about an hour. We're roughly around our hour. Is there anything that you would like to tell listeners, any kind of bits of advice, what you think, anything?
yeah, I think the best piece of advice I can give anyone if they were in a similar situation that I was a few years ago, like if there is something you want to do, like if you want to get into waterfowl, if you want to shoot your first deer, any one of those things, there's a way to do it. You just gotta not be afraid to put yourself out there, whether you do have the skills or do know how to set up for that activity, you're just kind of nervous to do it. Don't worry about what people are going to think or messing up, because otherwise, I mean, what's worse is just sitting around and waiting to do it. Or if you don't have any equipment, you don't have anything to get started, but you really really want to, um, there's so many ways to network. And I would definitely say, joining a trip of ours is going to be something that not only could possibly get you into that thing you want to try, but just instill that confidence and also just get you connected with people that are like you, right? I mean, there's a lot more ladies these days that are into hunting and fishing, but still sometimes it's really hard to find people that are similar to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when you're going out to the woods. You're not really going to find other people out in the
Right.
woods. You know what I mean? So,
Right. I
yeah.
have learned so since I hit my 40s, I have learned that the people that I want sitting around my table, the people that I want in my life, people that are my tribe, um, I have to be more choosy, because I am I'm in trapping and I'm outdoors and stuff like that. And so, not everybody gets that. But
Yeah.
the ones that I do have sitting there are the ones who encourage me, the ones that are
Right.
excited to hear about that next
Yeah.
that next trip, that next hunt. They're the ones that you message on your way to a job interview and they make you cry because they tell you how awesome that you are.
Yep.
Those are the people that you want in your life. And
Absolutely.
sometimes to find them, you need to go and sign up for a group that you know nobody in, because how are you going to meet those people if you don't put yourself in that situation? So I think that's
Right.
great advice. I absolutely do.
Yeah, I think just the number one thing is don't be scared or nervous about anything because you're gonna make a mistake regardless.
Right.
You're gonna shoot at a rabbit 1,000 times and still miss, or this, that, the other thing.
Yeah.
It's just, gosh,
I
just
agree. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk to me this afternoon. I know there's probably a million other things that you could be doing, but I really appreciate it. I appreciate you, and thank you so much for your time, Samantha.
yeah. Thanks so much, Linda. This was great, and I'm super ecstatic to be here.
And that concludes this episode of Women of the Wild podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you have any questions or would like to check out our website, it is www.womenofthewild.net. We post different events and everything that we've got going on. We would really like to also thank our sponsors, ACC Crappie Sticks, Girls with Guns, Southern Snare, Sawmill Creek Baits and Lures, RMC Custom Calls, Atlantic Coral Enterprise, Blast and Cast Guide Service, Epler Fur, Feather Moon Calls, Shangri-La Safari, Dr. Josh Farr Children's Books, and Shelley Emmer with Dirty Girl Guide Service. Thank you all, and hope that you tune in 2 weeks for our next episode.